Welcome to One Word a Day. I'm Sophia, pilot into the universe of Chinese. Let's continue unpacking ocean/industrial age concepts that first translated by Japanese scholars to Chinese. Well, to Japanese strictly, but because in Japanese there is kanji, that's Chinese character direct. There is no change to the Chinese. Well, I shouldn't say that because I don't know Japanese that well, but supposedly those are uh, preserved how Chinese characters will look like and the meaning as well. So among the Japanese um, scholars, they would try to map Western concepts, in this case, announced word. That's declaration. So this declaration, what does that mean? Like there was no such thing as declaration. It's group of people who are not in power, but they declare their independence mostly, right? Their idea, their political statements, put it out there, and that's declaration. And there was no such thing directly from existing Chinese expressions. So that was translated by Japanese scholars, and because we share some of the fonts in there, so Chinese, we can just directly borrow that without even knowing. Like I only discovered this later, very later, very recently. So 宣言, how that's expressed, I guess just from announced words. That means declaration. It makes sense, right? What is a declaration? It's announcing, verbalize, make it known through verbal communication. And that's what declaration is about. It's almost like giving a definition of what declaration is. So you have to announce it. So how this announcement was made? I put this spiraling thing because it's beautiful. And we see many, I guess, on architecture or clothing even, such decoration of, we call it a 回字纹, this spiraling thing, imagery. And apparently this was deeply embedded in Chinese culture. And we have this interruption, this dark age that now, when in 2025, when I'm trying to go back and see what exactly that means, as exists in this declaration, in this announced character, I can only imagine. I don't know the full historical context and how that character was used. All I know is it was commonly seen used in the decorative part of our space building, our world building, in architecture, in our clothing. But what else? Why it's so popular? Besides, it's aesthetically pleasing, all right? Like what, I guess, philosophical meaning that is to us. The 宣 announce concept was made of this big arch with a chimney. That is a private space. It's a shelter. But shelter to shelter is totally different. In this case, the 宣 in ancient classical China era's character concept that 宣 can only be made by the ruler of the country, the emperor. And the emperor make the announcement in the emperor's residence, which is the palace, right? So therefore, this shelter is a particular kind of shelter, very elaborate, probably the biggest housing, the best housing of the whole land, right? And then we have the spiraling thing sandwiched between heaven and earth. So these two horizontal lines, if we don't look at the framework of this shelter imagery, we took that out, we would have this top of the frame, bottom of the frame, and that's our biosphere. That's our existence, upper and lower boundary. We humans exist in between that. And okay, so Chinese always have this sense of we are part of the nature. It's very different from the Western way, right? Humans and nature kind of put human out of nature, out of the nature context. But the Chinese firmly embedded humans within the nature context. So heaven and earth were strongly aware that we're operating in between the limits, the boundary, the confinement of the physical world condition, which is the nature or the environment. And within that environment, that spiraling thing is almost like what we humans can do to make a change. We still make our change following the way of heaven and earth. That's like the Taoism thinking, like the way, beyond human control. So we want to go along, to go with the, I guess, the nature's way. And the spiraling is simply, I imagine it visualize this starting small, but spiraling outward. That's almost like the increase of energy. And in this context, it ends up meaning announcement. So it's almost like the seed of the origin of the thought. And then it kind of expand, and eventually kind of from few of people thinking this way, expand to the whole population to be influential. And this spiraling signifies that commotion or the human's intention of how to approach this within the boundary of heaven and earth and framed within the emperor's palace. And that's announcement. All right, my best shot. And then word, we have seen this many, many times. Well, Chinese is a very word aware culture. And so we have many, many concepts made of the word itself. And how Chinese visualize words. We have the mouse symbol at the bottom, which was actually a cookware, a pot. And these are the handles of the pot. So we use the pot to symbolize mouse, the diner. And then we have this almost like an arrow pointing downward. So that's kind of I guess that's an indicator directionally that's pointing downward toward the mouse. And then we have, again, this upward turning curve intersecting with this arrow pointing thing to mean it's inside the mouse, because this arrow pointing thing is kind of give you the sense of entering the mouse. And then when we intersect it with the needle part, not the, I don't know, the tack, if we visualize it as how do you say it? Like a nail, something like that. It's not a head of nail. It's the staff, the sharp point part. If we intersect it with that, that means inside the mouth. So what is inside the mouth? It's the tongue, because we have the teeth symbol that's kind of mimicking the physical look of the teeth. But tongue is almost like a shapeless. It can shape into any shape to make the pronunciation, to make the speeches, right? So how to visualize something who is shapeless by pointing the location is located inside the mouth. So the tongue, to make the tongue concept, we have to have the mouth concept. So here in one character, we have both the mouth and the tongue, and they are the organs to produce speech, to verbalize, right? And then we have the two horizontal lines. I imagine them to be the sound bites, diminishing over time and space. So it's like one bar is smaller than the bottom bar. And because Chinese is a first person perspective, we literally, the viewpoint of us is starting from the bottom of the screen, bottom of the screen. So you as a language user, your perspective, your eye point is at the bottom of the screen. And closer to you is the bigger, longer bar. And then further away, it's a smaller. So it's through you as the language user. After you're speaking, the word or the sound of the word is going to travel and in a diminishing order. So that's how Chinese verbalize the word or language, however scale because Chinese is very flexible. We can scale up and down as we wish according to the context. So here, even if I translate it as a word, it can mean language. It can mean words, mean passage. And when it's announced word, it got to be words, right? I intentionally skipped the S there because Chinese don't have inflection. They don't have single or plural. So even if here it's just word, it can mean announce the words. Usually declaration have to come with a full passage with many, many words, right? Definitely not a singular words. I don't know one singular word. I guess freedom can be one word declaration, right? So here is a visualization of what a declaration of independence look like. What could have been that people, mostly men, sing a few women there to hear, to audibly hear the message that collectively people make a decision to rebel, to declare their independence from Britain rule. And that's how Japanese scholar map it to Chinese. 宣言